In Elden Ring, there exists a place that is designed to grind the player to dust and test every single skill the player has learned thus far. This place requires full concentration, as one moment of distraction or carelessness can result in your end. A place so hostile that even my character, that is over 100 levels, can die in 1 or 2 hits by basically any enemy. And the developers decided to set it right next to the beginning area of the game. As the title reads, I'm discussing Caelid, a scarlet wasteland of misery and distress. When a new journey in Elden Ring begins, you emerge from the ground in the middle of Limgrave, a relatively calm and quiet place for players to figure out exactly how they want to build their character, and to test the new mechanics of the game, as there are tremendous differences between Elden Ring and Dark Souls that most are previously familiar with. This was the position I was in when I played the game day one. I was tasked to go to Stormvale Castle, an impressively detailed stronghold that lies to the north. Upon facing off with Margit the Fell Omen, and then having said face ripped straight off, I realized the game was asking me to retreat, to explore more and get stronger before coming back and giving victory another shot. So, as a new player, I looked at my map and realized there was a road heading south and a road heading east. To the south lies the Weeping Peninsula, a place very similar to Limgrave. In fact, I think it's still technically a part of Limgrave. And to the east lies the wasteland of Caelid. At the time, my map was still not revealed, so I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I began to march towards the east, towards many, many death screens and long-winded rants about how I hate From Software's game design. So anyways, 170 hours later, and I think I'm ready to tell you about my favorite place in this game and why I hate it. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. My journey through Caelid began before I crossed over the border, however, as that east-leading road has a few difficulties of its own before I earn the right to truly suffer. One of the notable encounters on the way to Caelid is a ruin called Summonwater Village, where a boss known as Tibia Mariner resides. Even as a low level, I tore through this boss, leading me to believe I was heading in the right direction for a new player. More important than his difficulty, however, was his visual aesthetic. Quick note before I bring up aesthetics, I'm trying to make this channel as audio friendly as possible, meaning I haven't put much priority on the visuals on screen, because I'm designing this channel to basically be 100% listenable, for reasons I'll explain in a later video. However, this video is going to be a bit different, as a part of the reason Caelid is so interesting is because of the way it looks, so this video demands a prioritized visual component. I'm just doing a little bit of experimenting. I hope you enjoy it. Back to the Tibia Mariner. He's a hunched over, ghostly undead with a soft purple glowing lantern above him. He sits in a boat and wields a sarcastically long horn of some kind. He uses the boat to try to smack you around and uses the horn to summon undead and giant ghostly skeletons to attack you. This guy poses pretty much no real threat, but fighting him at night oozes character as he teleports around the water, weightlessly maneuvering his boat to give you a good smack. After smacking him back a few times, it's time to continue. As I continued eastward, on the horizon, sitting on a cliff sits our foreshadowing of what's to come. Fort Gale looms as a soothsayer of sorts. Even if I don't fully agree with all of From Software's game designs, it's hard to disagree with the fact that they can craft an amazing world that tries its hardest to tell its own story. My last point of interest before entering Caelid is the Smoldering Church. On approach to the Smoldering Church, something happens that still gives me goosebumps even on my third playthrough. Whatever atmosphere I was traveling through previously begins to shift and fold into this ominous scarlet. This is such a naturally cinematic piece of animation that it had both my wife and I leaned back in fearful anticipation, expecting a cutscene or a boss to arrive. Besides a hostile NPC, there really isn't much threat at this current moment in time as I approach the border. The border is marked by this burning wall, conveniently obscuring our vision of Caelid. This is a way for the game to set up the reveal of Caelid. Before hopping over it, however, I turn around to see the east road I just traveled, and I'm pleased by this view of the Divine Tower of Limgrave, bathed in blood red, balanced in my vision by the gleaming Erd tree. Keep in mind, I'm just exploring to gain some levels and better equipment to fight arguably the first boss in the game, and I've been treated to such beauty as a reward for my patience. Now it's time to stop delaying the inevitable. Hopping over the burning wall and activating my first bonfire, Site of Grace, allows me to get a nice eyeful of Caelid, and what I see is terrifying. Dead trees and scorched earth, white rocks that at first glance look like mountains of bones if I squint hard enough. All the misery I see and feel in my heart is elevated by this bird monster perched on a dead tree, acting as a sentinel. on the watch for any creature or person foolish enough to get close enough to become its next meal. I have always believed first impressions matter, and Caelid leaves a great first impression. I hate using this word, but Caelid is my vibe. The media I consume often involves darker material. For example, one of my favorite bands is Vader, often sings of rot in apocalyptic wastelands. My favorite book is The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which is set in post-apocalyptic America. But something I share with Miyazaki, the designer of Elden Ring, is a love for Berserk. I feel this place is directly inspired by the eclipse in Berserk. I won't go into too much detail, but Caelid and the eclipse share very similar vibes. The blood-red sky, the piles of bodies and skeletons, and the same primal feeling of fear, and a cosmic sense of I don't belong here. So needless to say, I fell in love with Caelid the first moment I laid eyes on it. I'm pretty sure I spent about 40% of my first playthrough in Caelid, and it's funny because I genuinely don't think Caelid is meant to be reached as early as I did. On my journey through Caelid, I decided to stick to the main road for starters. I believe I just wanted to cling on to anything that resembled normalcy, and a road was normal, so therefore I stuck to it. You meet some enemies pretty quickly, a swarm of these rust-covered zombie guys that seem pretty easy at first, but have a grab attack that eats well over half of my upgraded health bar, and begins inflicting you with scarlet rot, a vicious type of poison that's important to the history and future of Caelid. I will speak on that in a moment. However, I want to show you this encampment I discovered. It's unmarked on my map, and we see these giant dogs and birds have swept through the encampment and killed the soldiers that were there. These were soldiers of Radahn, a group of soldiers loyal to a warrior who resides in the Redmane Castle, which I will also explore later. What I find interesting is if I explore the perimeter, you can also find deserters who are hiding for their life from the giant creatures. And while I don't blame them, I think the environmental storytelling stops there, as they immediately become hostile, alerting everything in the vicinity that they're there, and then get themselves torn to shreds. You should have just let me walk past, my friend. This situation is indicative of the broader conflict in Caelid. Throughout my journey in this hellscape, I often find strongholds of Radahn soldiers facing off against the creatures of this land. I do not like From Software's failure to tell cohesive stories. However, it is fun to come up with or figure out what's happening if I take the moment to ask questions. When I watch the Radahn soldiers defend themselves, I realize that they utilize fire as a means of offense and defense. Remember that burning wall at the beginning of the area? I wonder if that was a measure not to keep me out, but the soldiers' attempt to keep the monsters from spilling out into Limgrave, as it seems that the monsters are either weak to or afraid of flame. I like to watch as the soldiers use self-propelling armored chariots mounted with a flamethrower in the vanguard to burn away the creatures. The creatures, from what I've gathered, seem to be twisted mutations of enemies from before this land was melted over with scarlet rot. For example, I believe some of the giant dogs were previously normal dogs. Some even attempt to continue to do the jobs that they had before being mutated, such as a guard dog for a man named Gowry, and some sheep herding dogs. The scarlet rot seems to have completely corrupted them into these monstrous forms and have gone berserk from the pain, forcing the soldiers to adapt to survive in their few places they can, which I believe is silly. Why don't they just leave? Well, I suppose there's some pride in trying to reclaim the land you inhabited before the apocalypse, or a sense of duty to cull the horde of monsters and keep them from roaming wherever they please. That encampment we spoke of earlier had a large cart in the mix, so maybe this group was just trying to escape, and this is the end of those that try. Either way, I delve further into the heart of Caelid. As I wander along the path, it is impossible not to notice the ecology of Caelid. What grass remains is clearly dry and brittle, has either died away or is in the process of dying. The trees are either lifeless sticks or these twisted, warped growths that I feel should be more described as giant roots. One unique flora is these strange barnacles, or maybe mushrooms of some kind. I'm not quite certain, but from a distance they appear as skeleton-colored mounds. In my first journey, that's what I thought they were, mounds of skulls. But nope, there are skulls alright, but they are not giant mounds. They are just one or two skulls that are giant. Everything is bigger in Caelid, I guess. You'll come across these giant corpses that I believe were previously buried before the landscape was altered, but now their mystery is plain and bare for the world to see. My thoughts first race towards them being some sort of variation of the ice giants. I'm guessing the environment used to be a lot similar to Limgrave, so maybe some kind of hill giant or something? I'm just spitballing here. I keep bringing up the apocalypse or the environment being altered and scarlet rot and all that, so as I delve into the Lake of Scarlet Rot, it's about time to bring it up. Caelid is a battleground from a time prior. There exist two individuals with godlike power. One is General Radahn, the leader of the soldiers trying to fight the monsters here, and Malenia, Radahn's half-sister who led an army of clean-rot knights in a charge of supremacy against Radahn. Long story short, Malenia was inflicted with scarlet rot as a child. During her assault on Radahn, victory seemed to be in his favor, and instead of just taking her L, she used her body as a nuke to inflict Radahn and Caelid with scarlet rot. Then she ran back home to her false Erdtree with her tail between her legs to await us carrying a big old bag of vengeance for her environmental terrorism. If I sound like I hate her, it's because I do. I grew up with 5 other siblings, and she reeks of a sibling who would tear the whole family down if it meant she could get even one rung above everyone. Her stupid decision results in Radahn's entire homeland, kingdom, and his own body destroyed in an extremely slow and painful death. It's hard to feel anything but hatred towards her and her knights. As I journey onward, I find the spot that the battle reached its climax, the swamp of Aeneia, a place that requires I travel on horseback, lest I be stricken with scarlet rot myself. Inside this swamp, I see the remnants of the Cleanrot Knights that Malenia used in her assault. These poor guys still slosh around the site of the combat zone, looking for what I assume is Radahn soldiers. Their long bodies are covered in armor resembling that of their master, even including the long red hair. I'm sure there's more criticisms of Malenia when you realize her soldiers even needed to look like her. The knights are quite a threat and genuinely intimidating watching them wade through the scarlet rot. A sad existence, wading through poison that destroys your mind and your body, fighting a war that doesn't exist anymore. At the perceived ground zero of Malenia's nuke, known in-game as her Bloom, lies Commander O'Neill, a commander who served under General Radahn. He summoned who I perceive to be the ghosts of the soldiers who gave their lives defending themselves in the war with Malenia. He's tough, and his arena is straight off a metal album cover. You fight under the Bloom, which is a giant vine, root, flower, bud hybrid thing that sits in the center of a boiling swamp of rot. To the east of the Bloom, I encounter the town of Celia. Celia is kind of goofy because it seems like it should be something more towards Liurnia, the lakes part of the game, because inside of this town resides a group of sorcerer assassins who turn themselves invisible. There's a lot of lore implications with this city, but a lot of it resides outside of Caelid, so I don't want to go into too much detail. However, my boy Radahn studied gravity magic here, so keep this place in mind for now as we will talk about Radahn later. At the top of a cliff overlooking the city, I found a dying girl by the name of Millicent. She is dying from, you guessed it, scarlet rot. I gave her an item I found after bodying Commander O'Neill and taking his stuff. Her questline involves getting her prosthesis for her arm and I guess getting her rot into check. She has a connection to Malenia, but truth be told, I struggle to understand it, so I move on for now. Northeast of Celia, I discovered Elder Dragon Grail. She's a mother dragon who is either so old or so inflicted with scarlet rot that she is unable to attack or move. She is surrounded by her loving children, and presumably they take care of her in her crippled state. Genuinely, I find these dragons to just be chillin', which I find challenges the player to ask what to do with them. On one hand, you could kill her and reap a decent amount of rewards, or leave them be and just run past them, because although they're hostile, they're also just trying to survive in the apocalypse and won't pursue you very far. If the player decides to engage this beautiful family, you will find for every youthful dragon you slay, the mom's health decreases as she helplessly watches you slaughter her only source of happiness, till eventually she gives up and accepts her fate. Particularly cruel players can find that if you approach her rear, the youthful dragons won't go hostile as you tear through her health. Presumably, her cries of pain must be a common melody sang through Caelid, so her children don't realize her time has come. When she is slain, her children choose to remove their life as well. I'm embellishing my language, of course, but the fact remains that every thread of hope the inhabitants seem to have is either torn away by the environment or by the player. There's a load of smaller caves and places to explore in Caelid. Like I said, I basically spent a third of the game in this region. However, I'm only trying to tell you about the more exciting encounters on my journey. There's one more major encounter I want to tell you about. After I slay the Mother Dragon Grail, I believe I'm now powerful enough to face Margit the Fell Omen and continue through the game. So, I do so, until I remember, Radahn resides at Redmane Castle in Caelid. Like the life destroyer my character seems to be, I head that way and hear of a festival taking place at the castle. This festival is not one of partying, but of death. You see, Radahn is a proud and noble warrior who has led thousands of troops to victory. Along the way, Radahn made many friends, most of whom have a deep-seated love and respect for the warrior. After Millennia pulled her stunt, Radahn was infected with scarlet rot, and his mind had been destroyed. So, his friends have decided to host a festival to bring him to an honorable death. Remember, this seems to be out of respect, to put him out of his misery, and to bring his duties to an end. There's a few interesting lore bits about him. Remember me saying that he studied gravity magic at Caelid? Well, this was because he seems to have a knowledge of a threat residing in space, so he took the duty of being the one to use his powers to hold back the stars. And that seems to be why he keeps clinging to life, even though his faculties are gone. Also, he uses his gravity powers to allow him to continue riding his favorite horse, even though he'd crush it with how large he is. That's why I like Caelid, because no matter how gloomy and apocalyptic it gets, there's always some sort of hope the inhabitants are trying to cling to. This was my last major stop in my journey through Caelid, and what a climax it is. Some honorable mentions here at the end is this patch of fulgur bloom growing in this field of lightning. Also this ghost talking about how he missed watching Millennia fight. Caelid stands as a beacon of death and destruction, covered in the worst sickness imaginable with some of the scariest creatures in the game. If you can survive Caelid, you can handle any challenge in Elden Ring. I know I felt that way. The vibe is immaculate, and the creative departments involved with Caelid at From Software knocked it out of the park. I've been Rotebird. As always, like and subscribe for more.